Hey, God's chosen one. You didn't get here by chance. It wasn't a random click. It wasn't just another video among thousands. It was heaven itself that placed this message before you. Because there are moments in life when human words aren't enough. There are days when you look at your own story and think, is this really the end? Does everything I've experienced condemn me to repeat the same cycles? And it is precisely on these days that heaven moves. Not through noise, but through seemingly ordinary encounters that hide eternal purposes. You are drawn here because you are at the turn of a chapter. The page of your life that seemed stained by defeats, rejections, and silences is being touched by the hand of God. And when heaven touches a page, it doesn't just erase it. It rewrites it. And it rewrites it with eternal ink, impossible to remove. This is what you need to hear today. Heaven has already begun rewriting your story. No matter what they said about you, no matter how many times you were reminded of past mistakes, no matter how many times you found yourself trapped in the pages of pain, grief, and emptiness. God is not the author of unfinished stories. If you're still breathing, it's because He's still writing. And He doesn't write in a hurry. He writes with perfection. He writes with wisdom. He writes with details you can't yet see, but which one day you'll look back and understand. Every silence had a purpose. Every delay had a reason. Every pain was aligned with preparation. Have you ever felt like your life was an interrupted book? As if someone had ripped out entire chapters and left you feeling meaningless? Perhaps you've looked at others and thought, they're moving forward, they're growing, but I've been stuck on the same paragraph. This feeling isn't permanent. It's just a sign that God's pen is still moving. You see, when heaven rewrites, He doesn't just correct mistakes. He creates new plots. He connects unlikely characters. He changes scenarios. He puts you in places that once seemed unreachable. And above all, He transforms the narrative of failure into a testimony of victory. Joseph's story seemed marked by his brother's betrayal. Moses' story seemed marked by past mistakes. Esther's story seemed marked by her orphanhood. But when heaven rewrote, everything changed. And when He decides to rewrite, no one can erase it. Listen carefully. It's not your past that defines your future. It's God's pen. You may have been rejected by people, but you haven't been rejected by the author of life. You may have been forgotten by many, but you have not been forgotten by heaven. Those who judged you only looked at a draft, but God is presenting the final chapter. The enemy tried to write labels on you. He tried to write failure, abandonment, unsuccess. But God has already crossed out those words and written something new. Elect, kept, restored. And no human ink can override what heaven has already determined. You need to understand, it is not too late. It is not the end. It is not final. There are chapters that have not yet been revealed, and they are more glorious than all that came before. What lies ahead cannot compare to what is behind. Now take a deep breath and receive this revelation. Heaven is not just continuing your story, it is rewriting your story. It is changing the narrative. It is transforming memories of pain into seeds of purpose. He is converting tears into fuel for a future of victory. He is turning pages you thought would be forever glued together by trauma. You may not even feel it, but something has already begun. The rewriting process doesn't happen in the spotlight, but in secret. While you sleep, heaven works. While you cry, heaven writes. While you think you've lost, heaven has already declared you won. And why is this so important now? Because you can no longer continue to believe that your life is defined by what happened. What happened was only an introduction. What is about to happen will be the true revelation. This is the starting point. This is the initial breath. This is the moment when you receive not only comfort, but a summons. Because when heaven rewrites your story, it doesn't do it just for you. It does it so that your life becomes a living letter for many. Therefore, keep this in your heart. Your story is not over. It is simply being rewritten by heavenly hands. You are entering a new chapter. And this chapter will not have the same tone as the previous ones. It will be marked by twists and turns, by restorations, by divine encounters. It will be marked by promises fulfilled and honor restored. Don't give up on the book just because one chapter was painful. Don't abandon the reading only because the page seems dark. The darkness is merely the backdrop that highlights the fiery letter of the eternal author. And he has already begun to write. Today you receive a revelation. You are not what happened to you. You are what God is writing about you. Heaven has already begun to rewrite my story, and nothing can erase what God has ordained for me. There are marks in your life that you believed were definitive. Wounds that, even healed, continue to scream within you. Words hurled at your soul that echoed like court sentences. Moments when you looked in the mirror and saw not just the reflection of a face, but the reflection of a broken story. Perhaps you believed your identity was the label placed on you. Failure, rejected, forgotten. These words seem glued to your skin, like invisible tattoos you can't remove. But listen, what seemed like a final sentence was actually just a comma in the plot of heaven. The marks are not signs of condemnation. They are signs of survival. You've been through deserts, through silent nights, through closed doors, and each of these experiences has left its mark. But God doesn't see these marks as stains of shame. He sees them as scars of victory, as testaments to how much you endured and remained standing. Many have judged you by isolated chapters of your life. They looked at a fall and were already writing your biography. They looked at a mistake and said you had no future, but they are not the author. They merely leafed through torn pages and thought they could define the ending. But God, who is sovereign, was waiting for the right time to turn the chapter. The pain you bore was not punishment, it was preparation. You thought abandonment destroyed you, but in reality, it taught you to trust God radically. You thought betrayal ruined you, but it only revealed the true allies who would stand with you on the next level. You thought silence meant oblivion, but it was merely the stage being set for revelation. God never wastes pain. He never wastes tears. He collects every drop. He records every sleepless night. He transforms every prayer whispered in despair into a chapter of victory. You didn't realize it, but while you thought it was the end, heaven was writing between the lines. The marks that seemed definitive became signs of the process, and every process precedes a revelation. Perhaps you still ask, but why me? Why me? Because God knew you would endure. Because He knew that even bleeding, you would not deny your faith. Because He knew that when the turning point came, you would be a living testament, a testimony to the multitudes who today feel as you once did. Your pain was real, but it won't be the last chapter. It was raw material for the new narrative. That emptiness that felt like an eternal hole in your soul will now become the space where God's presence will dwell so intensely that there will be no doubt. You didn't win by your strength, but by the author of your story. Listen, there's no shame in having scars. Shame would be not learning anything from them. Shame would be remaining attached to a label that God has already torn away. You have scars, yes. But these scars are now proof that you passed through the fire and were not consumed, that you crossed deep waters and did not drown, that you were in dark valleys, but the light of heaven did not abandon you. The scars you once hid, God will now use as signs of authority, because those who bear scars know how to comfort. Those who have experienced rejection know how to embrace. Those who have known silence know how to listen. And that's what heaven does. It transforms scars into ministry, pain into destiny, tears into legacy. And even if you still feel pain remembering, understand, every wounded memory is being re-edited by the divine author. You will look back and say, if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be ready for this. Because heaven doesn't just write new pages, it rewrites the old ones, placing the seal of redemption upon them. The enemy wanted you to believe your story was a poorly drafted draft. He wanted you to think that the mistake was greater than grace. But grace always writes stronger. Grace always covers deeper. Grace always prevails over any sentence. Now you need to make a decision within yourself. Stop living as a prisoner of past chapters. The page has turned, the chapter has changed, and heaven has already declared, your story is not over, it is merely being rewritten. My scars are not a sentence, they are signs that I survived, and heaven has already transformed my pain into a testament to victory. There comes a moment in the life of everyone who carries a promise when heaven seems to fall silent. Prayers rise, but they don't seem to find an answer. The tears flow, but find no immediate echo. The heart cries out, but the surroundings respond only with silence. You've lived in this place, the place of the closed room, where the only company seemed to be the sound of your own crying. The place of long nights, where the darkness was not only external, but internal. The place where you asked yourself, has God forgotten me? This silence wasn't punishment. This silence was strategy. Because God's silence is never absence, it's always preparation. When heaven decides to rewrite a story, the first gesture is silence. It's like a writer who, before beginning a new paragraph, pauses. It's like a conductor who, before a musical explosion, raises his hands and suspends the sound, preparing the atmosphere for the note that will change the song. You mistook pause for abandonment. You thought God had moved away, when in fact, he was closer than ever. Silence was the space where he adjusted his heart, removing excess, healing wounds, cleaning the old pages to write new ones. Silence hurts because it confronts. It confronts the human need for immediate answers. It confronts our tendency to want to understand the entire plan at once. It confronts our impatience, which wants quick endings, without understanding that the author works in chapters. But it was in this silence that you learned to hear what truly matters. You discovered that when external voices are silent, God's inner voice becomes clearer. You discovered that the absence of an immediate answer generated deeper roots of trust. You discovered that, even without feeling it, you remained sustained. Think, if God had answered everything immediately, would you have matured? If every prayer had been answered instantly, would you have known perseverance? If every door had opened the same day you knocked, would you have learned to wait for the perfect timing? No. That's why silence was a school. It was loving discipline. It was secret training. The rewriting of your story didn't begin when you saw signs. It began in silence. It began when God placed you in a place where nothing seemed to be happening. But behind the scenes, everything was being aligned. While you were crying, he was already moving invisible pieces. While you were questioning, he was already repositioning people and circumstances. While you were wondering why nothing was happening, he was already writing what you wouldn't see until the right moment. This is the mystery of silence. It is not empty, it is full of divine activity. Heaven works in silence, but the result is always public. What God built in secret will be manifested in full light. You can still feel the remnants of that silence. Perhaps you still look back and remember the days when it felt like your prayers were hitting the ceiling. But now you see, it was there that your faith stopped relying on signs and began to depend on the essence of who God is. It was there that your spiritual roots sank deep because there was nothing superficial to lean on. It was there that you stopped being a child in faith and began to mature as an heir to promises. And know this, when the silence ends, the voice that emerges echoes like thunder. When God speaks after the silence, his words carry the weight of eternity. And that is what is happening now. The time of silence has already fulfilled its purpose. Now heaven begins to release rewriting decrees, and you will see with your own eyes that every minute of waiting was worth it. Do not curse the silence that formed you. Be grateful for the silence that strengthened you. It was the womb of promise. It was the womb of destiny. And from the womb of silence now arises a new voice, a new phase, a new chapter. The silence I faced wasn't abandonment, it was preparation. And now the voice from heaven announces the new chapter of my story. There are stories that seem stuck at one point. You look at your life and feel as if you're in an endless chapter of pain, rejection, silence, and waiting. It seems like the narrative never moves forward. It seems like heaven forgot to write the next paragraph. But listen carefully. God never leaves a chapter without purpose, and he never abandons a book unfinished. The same author who allowed the pages of struggle is the author who, in silence, prepares the exact moment to turn the page. When heaven decides to rewrite your story, the movement is neither too slow nor too fast. It's in perfect timing. And when the page turns, you realize that each old line was building the strength to sustain what would come next. Think of Joseph, sold by his brothers, thrown into a pit, forgotten in prison. If you looked only at these chapters, you would say, the story is over. But the author wasn't finished, and in a single day God turned the page. From prison to the palace, from rejection to honor, from oblivion to remembrance. The divine pen writes in curves that human logic cannot predict. The same happens to you. You thought the chapter of loss would be the end. You believed that silence would be the last word. But God was merely positioning the commas, adjusting the periods, preparing the transition. And now the moment has come. The author is turning the page. When God turns the page, changes happen unexpectedly. The door that has been closed for years suddenly opens. The person who never saw you begins to seek you. The environment that rejected you begins to recognize your presence. It's like a storm breaking in the middle of the night. Suddenly, the clouds part, and the moonlight covers the earth as if it had always been there, just waiting for the right moment to shine. You will realize that when the page turns, no human effort is needed to explain or justify. Things simply begin to align. God's grace creates connections your work couldn't buy. God's favor opens doors your strength could never reach. God always uses contrast to show the power of His rewriting. From night to day, from silence to revelation, from the desert to the garden, from shame to honor. This is what He is doing now. What seemed like loss is becoming testimony. What seemed like delay is transforming into strategic positioning. What seemed like abandonment is revealing itself as protection. Make no mistake, the author never lost his pen. While you thought you were taking a break, he was writing the invisible details that would give meaning to the entire work. The enemy tried to convince you that your life was just a poorly written draft, never to become a finished work. But God declares today, you are a precious manuscript, handwritten by the eternal author. And because He is faithful, no human error, no betrayal, no rejection has the power to erase what He has written. When heaven rewrites, it is not a superficial correction. It is a profound transformation, where even crooked lines are used as part of the beauty of the narrative. You may still ask, but how will I know when the page is turned? You will know because things will begin to carry a new atmosphere. Conversations will have a different tone. Opportunities will have a new lightness. And even your inner posture will change. What once hurt you will no longer have power. What once paralyzed you will no longer have strength. Because when God turns the page, He doesn't just change the setting, He also changes you to experience the new setting. Don't forget, every book has introductory chapters. They set the stage for the climax. That's what God has done so far. Every tear, every wait, every silence, everything was a necessary introduction so that the next chapter would shine even brighter. Now you enter the part of the story where heaven visibly intervenes. And it will be so clear, so strong, so supernatural, that even those who didn't believe in you will say, it was God who wrote it. The author of my life is turning the page, and no chapter of pain can stop the new story that heaven has already written for me. You, God's chosen one, need to understand something essential. The page that heaven has just turned in your life not only changes you from within, but also alters the way the world sees you. For too long, you were seen as invisible. For too long, your words were ignored, your presence disregarded, your faithfulness despised. But God never allowed you to be forgotten. Silence was not abandonment. Rejection was not punishment. It was God's hiding place, preparing for the time when the chosen one would be revealed. Think of David, anointed in the field, forgotten even by his father when Samuel went to choose among his sons. David, the smallest, the unlikely, the invisible, but the oil chose him. And the oil never misses its destination. God's chosen one may be ignored by men, but he will never be ignored by heaven. Now heaven is repositioning you, God's chosen one. It will no longer be possible for them to ignore the grace you carry. It will no longer be possible for them to despise the authority heaven has already placed over your life. God's favor is like an invisible seal that changes your atmosphere. People may not be able to explain it, but they will begin to notice. They will sense something different in you. And what is that something? It is the mark of divine election. You are different, not because you chose to be, but because God chose to set you apart. This difference has cost tears, isolation, and misunderstanding. But now this same difference will be the reason why doors will open, invitations will arrive, and recognition will be granted. God's chosen one, never forget, you are not where you are by chance. The trials you went through were spiritual laboratories. Humiliation was a training ground. Silence was a school of depth. Solitude was the place where you learned to recognizing God's voice amidst the noise. And because you've been through all this, you're now ready. Those who previously saw nothing in you will begin to see everything God has placed in you. And it won't be through human merit, but through the hand of the Almighty upon your life. Heaven works in contrasts. He who was forgotten will be remembered. He who was rejected will be sought after. He who was left aside will be called forward. It's not about boasting. It's not about proving others wrong. It's about proving God was right when He chose you. It's about manifesting the glory of the one who writes impossible stories so the world knows this is God's chosen one. Feel this. The atmosphere around you is changing. The weight of contempt is lifting. The mantle of honor is being placed upon your shoulders. And the most impressive thing is that this recognition will come not only from friends, but even from enemies. Even those who didn't believe in you will have to testify. Something different is about this man, about this woman. Only God could have done this. God's chosen one. You no longer need to justify yourself. You don't need to explain your journey to those who never wanted to understand it. Heaven has already spoken for you. Your election has already manifested itself in you. Now is the time to lift your head, not as someone seeking self-glory, but as someone who walks with the awareness that they carry an eternal calling. Your life is a living letter, written by God Himself, open for the world to read. Prepare yourself. Places that were once closed will now open. People who never mentioned your name will begin to speak of you in rooms you never imagined entering. Doors that seemed sealed forever will begin to move before the spiritual authority you carry. All this because heaven has decided to reveal what was hidden. You, God's chosen one, will no longer be a secret. It will be living testimony that the divine pen remains active, rewriting stories in the 21st century. As God's chosen one, I will no longer live in the shadow of oblivion. Heaven is revealing me, and honor is being poured out upon my life as a sign of God's choice. God's chosen one, understand, every great story has a turning point. But before full revelation, there is always one last night, the darkest, before the dawn. Many give up at this stage. This is when the weight becomes unbearable. This is when the doors remain closed, even after so many prayers. This is when the soul cries out, "Did I really hear God's voice? Was the promise meant for me?" This is the most critical moment. Not because you failed, but because you are about to cross over to the side where the promise begins to manifest. God's chosen one knows this phase well. It is the silence of heaven. It's the feeling of invisibility. It's the weight of accumulated weariness. You look back and see all you've endured. You look ahead and see nothing but darkness. And in that instant, the enemy whispers, "See, you've waited in vain. Nothing will change." But hear clearly, this is the oldest lie of darkness. Darkness always screams loudest when the light is about to break through. Chosen of God, this is the final test. It's no longer about enduring betrayals, losses, or rejections. It's about remaining steadfast even when there are no visible signs, remaining when everyone else has left, remaining when there is no confirmation, remaining when your heart is weary, but your spirit continues to say, "I know whom I have believed." This is the kind of faithfulness heaven honors, and it is exactly this kind of faithfulness you carry. Think of the people of Israel before the Red Sea. They had left Egypt. They had seen the hand of God in signs and wonders. But before the water, they felt fear like never before. It was the last station before the crossing, the most critical, but also the most glorious. It is the same with you, God's chosen one. This final phase is not a sign of defeat, but of proximity. The greater the hardship, the closer liberation is. The darker the night, the more imminent the morning. Perhaps you say, "But I no longer hear God's voice." Remember, the teacher is silent during the test. Silence is not absence. It is presence in the form of trust. Heaven trusts that you have learned your lesson, and so it lets you walk, even when you seem alone. This silence is the harbinger of approval. More than just navigating circumstances, you are navigating within yourself. You are leaving behind the fragile version, dependent on the applause of men. He is rising in the mature version, rooted in God's love, firm in his identity as the chosen one. This journey is painful because it requires dying to the old way of seeing life. But it is necessary because only those who die to the old can be born to the new. God's chosen one never ends his story at night. The night is merely the stage where the promise begins to shine. And you need to hear this. You are not late. You have not been forgotten. You are on the threshold of a turning point. In a little while, what seemed like a prison will become a palace. In a little while, what seemed like loss will become multiplication. In a little while, what seemed like silence will become public testimony. God never reveals without preparation. And this last station is the final preparation. He is strengthening your hands, aligning your mind, refining your heart. Because the promise is not just for you, but also for those who will be reached through you. Your story is not just your story. It is a living message for many others who need to see that heaven still rewrites stories. Listen in the Spirit. There is already movement around you. The pages are already being turned. The pieces are already falling into place. Even if you don't see it yet, heaven has already decreed. God's chosen one is ready for revelation. I, as God's chosen one, will not give up in the last season. I will remain steadfast, because I know that the darkest night is only the announcement of the dawn of the promise. God's chosen one. The time has come to realize something subtle yet profound. Heaven never announces the promise only at its end. It plants signs along the way. Signs that seem small to human eyes, but which carry the power of divine confirmation. These signs are not coincidences. They are evidence that God's hand is moving the invisible gears of your history. What seemed blocked begins to show signs of movement. What seemed dry begins to sprout. What seemed forgotten begins to be remembered. Imagine a land that has endured months of winter, cold, dry, colorless, no apparent life. Suddenly, a small sprout breaks the surface. It's not yet the harvest. It's not yet the garden in bloom, but it's living proof that winter is over and spring has arrived. So it is with you, God's chosen one. Perhaps your harvest isn't yet complete, but the first signs are already appearing. An unexpected word that brought renewal. An unlikely encounter that opened understanding. A small door that opened but points to something greater. Heaven has a way of working that always surprises. You expected grandiose doors, but he begins with details that seem simple. A new connection, an opportunity that arrives quietly, an unexpected favor from someone you never imagined. Don't despise these small beginnings. They are keys that unlock greater paths. God is showing that he doesn't need human logic to move. He opens doors where there are no doors. He creates passages where there were only walls. God's chosen one. What you don't yet realize is that heaven is realigning everything. He's moving people from one place to another. He's closing doors that wouldn't serve your future. He's clearing the path of distractions and noise. And in the midst of all this, signs begin to emerge. An unexpected invitation, a recognition that seemed unlikely. A path that had been closed for years, but suddenly opens before you. But this is where you need something fundamental. Discernment. Not every door is for you to enter. Not every opportunity is part of the promise. Signs don't come to distract you, but to confirm what has already been spoken to your spirit. So don't rush. Pray. Wait. Let the Holy Spirit confirm in you what is part of the prophetic turn. God's chosen one doesn't chase after doors, because they know that the right doors open at the right time. Remember when the angel came down and stirred the waters of the pool at Bethesda? It was a sign that something was about to happen. The same is happening now. You begin to feel movement. You sense that something is changing, even if it's not yet fully visible. The environment begins to respond to heaven's decree. It's as if the spiritual waters around you are being stirred. This movement is a sign that healing, liberation, and transformation are already being unleashed. Another powerful sign that begins to manifest is inexplicable favor. You notice people reaching out to help you without you even asking. You notice doors opening without human effort. You notice that what was once a constant struggle now begins to flow naturally. This is favor, and favor cannot be explained. Favor is simply recognized as evidence that God is with you. Sometimes the sign isn't a door opening, but an inner breath. You begin to feel peace amidst the chaos, courage amidst fear, certainty amidst uncertainty. This is the Holy Spirit breathing within you. He is saying, "Fear not, God's chosen one. What I promised is underway." You may not yet see the sun in its fullness, but you are already noticing the change on the horizon. The sky is no longer completely dark. The dawn begins to break. These are the first signs of the turning point. It's not yet the full day, but it's the certainty that the day has already been decreed. God's chosen ones need to understand. The small signs are as important as the great revelation. They are not distractions. They are confirmations. They tell your heart, keep going. Don't stop now. You are on the right path. And each time you notice these signs, your faith is strengthened, your hope is renewed, and your vision aligns with what God is about to do. I, as God's chosen ones, recognize the signs of the turning point. I know that every detail is confirmation from heaven, and I will not despise the small beginnings, for they are evidence that the promise is already in motion. God's chosen one, you have walked through the valley of silence. You have endured the season of rejection. You have learned to interpret the small signs. But now comes the time when heaven doesn't just whisper, it announces. The time comes when what was hidden in secret begins to be exposed in full light. For a long time, your preparation was hidden. No one saw your tears in the closed room. No one noticed the battles you fought in silence. No one recognized the nights you spent in prayer. But now, God's chosen one, what was hidden will become public. What was secret will be proclaimed. What seemed forgotten will be remembered before many. The promise that seemed distant will now be visible, not only to you but to all who doubted the process. It is the hour of revelation. When heaven decides to rewrite history, it doesn't do so in eternal silence. After the time of silence comes the time of announcement. It's like the sound of a trumpet that everyone can hear. It's like the sunrise that no one can stop. Heaven will announce your new season, not by human effort, not by manipulation, but by divine decree. And when God decrees, no one can revoke it. So far, you've seen small doors open, but now the big ones will come. Doors that change scenarios, doors that establish new destinies, doors that no one believed you could walk through. And know this, these doors are not the result of your strength. They open because the author of your story has determined that this is the right time, and when heaven decrees, neither men, nor systems, nor opposition can stop it. Chosen by God, the recognition that comes now is not boasting. It's a testimony. It's God showing the world that those who remain faithful in secret will be honored in public. Just like Joseph, who was taken from prison and placed in the palace in a single day. Just like David, who was anointed in secret and then recognized before the nation. Just like Esther, who was raised from anonymity to change the destiny of a people. The same God who rewrote their history is rewriting yours. And when he writes, no one can erase it. The battles you fought in silence will now have public victories. Those who doubted will see. Those who mocked will witness. Those who thought silence was defeat will see it was only preparation. Your victory will not only be for you to rejoice in, but for many to know that God is faithful. Your victory will be a prophetic sign to others still in the valley, showing that the same God who acted for you will also act for them. And when these victories come, you'll realize something surprising. They won't come with weight. They won't come with burdens. They won't come as battles you must win alone. They will come with the lightness of grace. You'll see doors opening effortlessly. You'll see people leaning in on your behalf. You'll see circumstances falling into place like pieces of a divine puzzle. It won't be by the strength of your arm. It will be by the power of the promise. Now your life will become a testimony. Every detail will be living proof that God writes different stories. You'll be an open letter, read by all, showing that heaven is capable of turning entire chapters. And when they look at you, they won't just see your trajectory. They'll see God's faithfulness stamped on every victory. In the previous chapter, you saw the first signs of dawn. Now the sun rises fully. It's not just brightness on the horizon. It's full day, it's total light, it's a manifest promise. And you, God's chosen one, walk confidently in this new era, because now you know it wasn't a coincidence. It was rewritten from heaven. As God's chosen one, I enter through the great doors, live the public revelation of the promise, and bear victories that testify to heaven's faithfulness. God's chosen one. When heaven rewrites your history, the purpose is not only to lift you up, but also to teach you to endure. Many receive victories, but few know sustain them. Many reach the light, but forget to maintain their roots. Therefore, the Lord doesn't just open doors. He gives you foundations so you don't collapse within them. You spent a lot of time in the hidden. That time wasn't wasted. It was there that your roots grew deep. It was there that your faith grew stronger. It was there that you learned that you are not sustained by human strength, but by the grace of God. Now that you have entered a season of visibility, your roots become even more important. Because it's not the height of the tree that guarantees its survival, it's the depth of its roots. And you, God's chosen one, have deep roots. Visibility brings responsibility. Victories bring weight. But the Holy Spirit teaches you to carry this weight lightly. Because it's not you who sustains the promise, it's the promise that sustains you. You were not raised to live burdened. You were raised to show that when heaven opens paths, He Himself keeps them open. And when grace leads, no human weight can destroy them. Sustaining the new season is a test. Many fall because they confuse blessing with self-promotion. Many are lost because they think the promise was their own achievement. But you, God's chosen one, know where your victory came from. You did not fight alone. You did not win through the strength of the flesh. It was the Lord who raised you. It was He who rewrote your story. And because of this, you do not forget the source. Now that your voice is heard, remember, you didn't need to shout to be noticed. It was the anointing that made you stand out. It was the silent faithfulness that echoed louder than any justification. And so it must remain, with humility, because true greatness is not in being seen, but in continuing to be an instrument of heaven. And you were called to be an instrument, not an idol. You were raised to be a channel, not a destination. God's chosen one does not live in extremes. He does not swell with applause, nor does he lose himself in criticism. He remains steadfast, knowing that it is not human recognition that confirms his identity, but God's eternal decree. This is the posture that sustains the new season, balance. And balance is not neutrality. It is remaining aligned with the sky in any scenario. You will feel a new weight upon you, but this weight will not be a burden. It will be one of glory, a glory that is not yours, but that flows through you. A glory that does not exalt you, but exalts the name above all names. This weight is a sign that you have been entrusted with something great, and only God's chosen one can carry glory without losing themselves in it. Even in the midst of visibility, the secret remains your strength. Do not abandon the place of prayer. Do not neglect moments of silence before the Father, because it is in secrecy that the flame remains lit. It is in secrecy that humility is renewed. It is in secrecy that you continue to be refined. If the public is the stage for manifestation, the secret is the place of preservation. And without secrecy, there is no sustenance. The Lord did not raise you for a moment. He raised you for a permanence. Your story will not be a brief chapter of success, but a long journey of faithfulness. You are not a fleeting promise. You are a legacy. And this legacy is built not only with achievements, but with consistency. Chosen of God, remain. Because the same heaven that raised you will sustain you. As chosen of God, I sustain the new season with deep roots, constant humility, and fidelity to the heaven that rewrote my story. The moment has arrived. the one you waited for in tears, the one that seemed distant, the one that seemed impossible. This is the time when the invisible becomes visible. This is the time when the hidden promise materializes before your eyes. This is the time when heaven moves and earth can no longer deny it. The prophetic turning point is not just a change in circumstances, it is a change of atmosphere. It is when everything that seemed contrary begins to cooperate. It is when resistance gives way to favor. It's when the door that had been locked for years suddenly opens with ease. You thought you had been forgotten, but you were being reserved. You thought you were late, but you were being aligned. You believed you had wasted time, but in truth, you were being prepared to recover in a single instant what seemed distant. The prophetic turnaround comes to confound those who didn't believe in you. It comes to silence those who mocked your journey. It comes to show that what sustains your life is not the opinion of men, but the decree of God. Look at Joseph. For years, he was forgotten in a prison. His gifts seemed invisible. His interpretations had no immediate echo. But in a single day, the prophetic turnaround took him out of prison and placed him in the palace. God didn't need a lengthy process, just an instant. And in that instant, everything changed. So it will be with you. The turnaround that God is bringing is sudden, but not improvised. It is the fruit of years of silent preparation. It is the accumulated answer to prayers you had already forgotten. It is the harvest of seeds planted with pain, watered with tears, but guarded in faith. The manifestation of the prophetic turnaround does not happen to inflate your ego, but to glorify the name of the Lord. When the improbable manifests, no one can deny it was God. When the door opens effortlessly, no one can say it was human strategy. When favor pours out without explanation, everyone will have to acknowledge it was the hand of God. And see, this turnaround is not just external. It begins within you. You are no longer the same person who entered the desert. You now carry firmness, clarity, maturity. The turnaround has already begun in the invisible, and now it will only be reflected in the visible. Listen carefully. The season of your life has changed. You have entered another time. You no longer need to defend yourself because your own life has become a testimony. You no longer need to beg for acceptance because now doors will open naturally. What was once a struggle will now be surrender. What was once sweat will now be grace. The prophetic turning point is the moment you stop living for survival and begin living for abundance. It's when you realize that your story doesn't end in shame, but in honor. It's when you understand that every tear, every long night, every silence was not in vain. Everything pointed to this moment. The heavens are announcing the time of change has arrived, and this turning point will be public. What happened inside will be revealed outside. What was hidden will be manifest. What seemed small will be magnified. What seemed finished will now be resurrected with strength. Don't be surprised when those who ignored you begin to seek you out. Don't be alarmed when those who doubted come seeking advice. Don't be surprised when opportunities arise without human effort, because that's what the prophetic turnaround does. It reverses roles. Those who laughed are now silent. Those who mocked are now observing. Those who rejected are now respecting. The turnaround won't be in just one area, but in all. There will be emotional, financial, spiritual, and relational restoration. What was blocked in one aspect of your life will now unlock in a series. You will enter a season of acceleration, where blessings will come in waves, and you will realize that lost time will be made up with interest. Look around you. Things are not as they were. You feel in your spirit that something has changed, and this feeling is not imagination. It is the inner testimony that heaven has already decreed your turnaround. You will no longer be the person remembered for your struggles. You will be the person remembered for your victory. They will no longer speak only of the tears you shed. They will speak of the table God has prepared before you in the presence of your adversaries. It will no longer be the story of those who suffered, but of those who overcame through the power of the promise. This is the mark of a turning point. You cease to be a victim and become living evidence of divine favor. Your life begins to preach without you having to raise your voice. Your presence begins to carry weight, Because it is no longer about your story, but about God, us who wrote your story. And here is the final word of this chapter. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It wasn't coincidence. It was decree. It was promise. It was divine alignment. Heaven wrote, and now the earth must obey. The prophetic turnaround can no longer be postponed. It is yours now. The time of my turnaround has come. Heaven has decreed, the earth has manifested, and nothing can stop what God has determined for me. The time of my turnaround has come. Heaven has decreed, the earth has manifested, and nothing can stop what God has determined for me. The time of my turnaround has come. Heaven has decreed, the earth has manifested, and nothing can stop what God has determined for me. If this message spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who also needs to hear that the time of silence is over and that their voice will be heard. And when you feel you need more prophetic direction, choose the next video that resonates with your soul. Heaven has different words for each season of your life, and you are ready to receive them.